Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my full review and final impressions of the Sony 24-105 f4 piece of glass. Now, this has been a very buzzworthy lens. Many have been after it. It's had some production issues. It's been in stock, out of stock. Really a coveted piece of glass because at its price point, there simply isn't anything else like it on the market. And after spending over a month with this lens, this is a lens rental. It was furnished to me by Sony for review purposes. I can tell you it is a very solid piece of glass throughout its entire range, which is something, well, you couldn't necessarily say for anything in the lineup because, quite frankly, this didn't exist. As close as you were going to get to the 24-105 that we're looking at here is the Power Zoom G lens that I introduced in the preview video, which of course is much larger, slightly unruly, and really the true benefit is that it does have a power zoom, something that, of course, the 24-105 does not have. But if you're a still shooter and not a video shooter, the power zoom is pretty much irrelevant. So what was my experience with this lens? Well, first and foremost, remember, this was a copy sent to me for review purposes. That means it was used. It was not brand new. I did find the zoom ring to be very sticky. So unlike pretty much every other piece of glass in my arsenal, that rendered it fairly useless for video. So for example, I've got the A7R Mark III right here with the Zeiss f4 16-35. Still a favorite of mine, a go-to, really a lens that if you purchase, you will not regret, as long as you're comfortable with the f4 and don't need the G Masters f2.8. Very similar size on these lenses. Of course, the wide-angle Zeiss does not have the reach of this G Series 105. However, I can tell you that, again, regarding the stickiness on the ring for zoom, I have none of that with any of my Sony Zeiss lens. Of course, I do not have that with the power zoom lens that I just introduced into frame. So when it comes to video quality, I was not thoroughly impressed, unfortunately. Now, again, this may just be my copy of the lens. I do have some samples that I'm going to be posting from my travels, but you're not going to be impressed, and that's because this thing constantly sticks. I was not able, you can actually see it right now, I cannot get a smooth zoom through the range on this ring. It's just every millimeter sticky, sticky, sticky. Now, could this be rectified in several ways? Yes, but again, I don't know if it's just specific to my copy. For review purposes here, I'm going to assume that it is just that I got a crap copy because I haven't read from the research I've done about too many other users having a problem with the ring. So it's likely just my copy. Now, when it comes to still imaging, that's where this does a very good job. Now, I was shooting predominantly on the A7R Mark III. I also used it with my A7R Mark II. Both are 42 megapixel sensors. I do not feel that this lens is the best when it comes to fidelity for all 42 megapixels. I think this lives a much happier life on the A7 Mark III, which I also did have a chance to use it with. So for those of you wondering, is this the right lens for 42 megapixels of resolution? I'll tell you now, in my opinion, you're better off throwing this on something like the A7 Mark III, where you have less photographic information to resolve. And that's because I just don't see this lens producing as high quality images as what I was getting out of my Sony Zeiss lenses, which of course in benchmarking may be very similar. In fact, this lens, I wouldn't be shocked if it outperforms some of the older Sony Zeiss FE full frame lenses, but in my experience, the 42 megapixels was far better resolved with the Zeiss glass I have. Again, we're kind of comparing apples to oranges, but I have to let you know this is my experience. And then, of course, as you know, when it comes to zooming in video, this is pretty much a video lens compared to this in terms of how smooth my zooming is with both the 16-35 as well as the 24-70 f4 Zeiss lenses, whereas this was just unusable on the video side. And I know I'm harping on it, but I had higher expectations from this. Again, could just be my copy. But Overall, if you are looking for a lens that's going to live on your A7 Mark III, you cannot go wrong with this as long as you get a copy that, again, does not have a sticky zoom ring, because you will have the best of both worlds in a very compact form at a very affordable price. That is not something I can say, obviously, for the Zeiss lens. That is still my favorite, my go-to all the time, the 16-35. These are essentially the same price. I mean, this was $1,350 when it launched. This is, I believe, $1,300 right now, or $1,200. I can't remember. The price escapes me at the moment. So they're very close in price, but obviously one is a wide angle, one is not. They both are f4 throughout their range, but that is the beauty of this 24-105, is that you do have that versatility. The included lens hood is plastic. I would have liked to have seen something a little bit more substantial. But again, remember what you're getting here, and that is really the beauty of the 24-105, is that you're getting an amazing value at the price, and not with, I would say, giving up too much when it comes to still. Now, on the video side, I've made it clear I prefer this lens. I far prefer, obviously, my video lens right here. I mean, there's just no comparison, not just because of the power zoom, but the overall quality of what I'm getting out of this is night and day versus the 24-105. But again, so is the price, so is the size, even though they have very similar zoom ranges. When it comes to pricing, $2,500 on the left, and again, like $1,200 on the right. So you cannot even really put these in the same ballpark. What's similar, of course, though, is their actual reach. I mean, 28-135 with the video lens in my left hand, 24-105 with the still, hopefully, video-capable lens in my right hand. But overall, the 24-105 did not disappoint for still imaging. I mean, really, when I put this up against the 16-35, at least in the applicable focal range that it could accommodate, so that's 24-35, and then when I put it up against my Zeiss 24-70 f4 lens, very similar. Of course, we're not getting as wide as the 16 here, and you already know I've complained enough about this zoom ring, but when it comes to the actual fidelity of the images, not on a 42 megapixel, but again on the 24 megapixel sensor of the A7 Mark III, they were incredibly close. And that says a lot, because in a sense, you're getting two lenses here for the price of one. And that is why this was such a coveted piece of glass at launch. Sony had nothing like it to cover 24-105 f4 constant throughout that range, and doing so at an affordable price. It's not too good to be true, folks. It is legit. And that is what today's video is all about. I am not disappointed with this lens. Will it be a personal purchase for me? Likely not, simply because I already have enough glass out the wazoo here, and that fits my needs exactly as I prefer. But if I was starting from scratch, which I already did after Hurricane Matthew, this would be at the top of my list. No question about it. Its price just makes it far too compelling for its versatility. And I, as many of you know, even though I didn't travel light on this over 1 month of travel that I just embarked on around the world, I would like to travel light, and in a perfect world, that's exactly what this lens provides for you. And that's why there were many days that I was carrying this around instead of course, again, the G-Series 28-135 video lens, because even though this presents the best of both worlds, it has issues of its own, as you probably already know if you know anything about the lens. But on the A7R Mark III, this lens did live happily, although, again, I did prefer my Zeiss glass over this, so bear that in mind for whatever it's worth. But if you've got the A7 Mark III, this is a no-brainer, as long as you don't have the sticky zoom. And that's also only if you care about video. I mean, if you don't care about shooting 4K video, then the stickiness, if this isn't just an issue with my copy and I got a bad copy, which is what I'm assuming, I've said this multiple times, then you don't really need to worry about it whatsoever. On the other hand, if it's silky smooth on all the new copies that are out there in the marketplace, then it only makes this lens better. This is still one of the best in the business that Sony natively offers right now. The only one, obviously, with this focal range, other than the video lens that I keep bringing up. But just really impressed, and for the price, I would have expected this lens to be more around $1,500 to $1,600 at least. So it's one of the few times where I can say Sony actually delivered a very good piece of glass at a value-oriented price, where they get a lot of critique for not necessarily delivering the best value when it comes to glass, although when it comes to bodies, there's no question Sony takes a crap on everybody else when it comes to value. I mean, the feature set and capability that you get out of Sony full-frame mirrorless bodies, even the APS-C bodies, is just still unmatched. I don't care what anyone has to say. And now with a piece of glass like this, they're following suit and making sure that not only pros are going to be satisfied, but hobbyists, enthusiasts, amateurs are going to be really happy that something like this is available to them, because they can really just live with one lens. If 24 is wide enough for you, for me, it's not, and that's why the Zeiss still is basically the permanent fixture on my A7R Mark III. But again, I was traveling with the A7R Mark II as well, something I hadn't initially anticipated but ended up doing just for versatility. And as I said before, I would have loved to have traveled light, but I didn't. With that said, again, I can easily recommend the 24 to 105 f4G. You're not going to have any complaints as long as you don't have that sticky zoom ring. It really does deliver sharp imaging and video, if it's not sticky, throughout its entire range. Will things get a little bit soft at 105? Yes, of course. It's a telephoto lens. It's not a prime lens, so you have to have realistic expectations. But I was expecting worse, let's put it that way. I was not expecting the fidelity that I got out of this lens, because again, the price seems too low to deliver such good results. And if you can get your hands on one, I think now they are back available at the retail level. But then again, I have been out of the country for over a month, so it's not like I've been keeping my eye on retail availability. But I think by now Sony has gotten them back into the pipeline. You will not be upset about picking up the 24 to 105, especially paired with the A7 Mark III. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.